All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today we're focusing on the Pallas's fish eagle,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
and we're going to be pulling some cool facts from this text here. Pallas's fish eagle, a majestic aquatic predator.
That's good.
So get ready because we're going to learn about this awesome predator
hmm
and how it connects to the health of the planet, all without, needing to read a whole textbook.
Yeah, it's a great example of how interconnected everything is. The Pallas's fish eagle isn't just like a cool bird to look at.
Right.
It's a signal for how healthy the whole ecosystem is.
Well, I've seen pictures of this eagle, and it is striking. That white head, the underparts, dark brown wings, and then you've got that silvery body.
Oh, yeah.
It's like nature's tuxedo almost.
It is.
But the text mentions that that coloration isn't just for looks, like there's a purpose to it.
Absolutely. That silvery color actually helps it blend in with the water when it's seen from below.
Oh, wow.
So when it's trying to ambush fish, it's harder for them to see it coming. Nature is so cool, form and function all in one.
Beautiful and stealthy.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense if you think about it. Fish is its main food, right?
You got it. The Pallas's fish eagle loves fish, but they're not picky eaters.
Okay.
I mean, if fish are hard to find, they'll go for amphibians, small reptiles,
Even carrion.
carrion. Hold on, what's carrion?
Basically dead animals. Not the prettiest thing, but hey, you got to eat.
So, not always a glamorous diet. All right, opportunistic, I get it. But I bet those sharp talons and that beak,
Oh, yeah.
those come in handy for catching live prey, right?
Oh, absolutely. Super strong. Strong enough to hold fish that are bigger than the eagle itself.
Seriously.
Bigger than itself.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That's wild. I was reading about their hunting technique, too. The stoop diving, I think it's called.
Yeah, stoop diving.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it's amazing to watch. Picture this, the eagle soaring high above the water. It spots a fish, folds its wings, and dives straight down. Just plunges right in to grab it.
Like a feathered torpedo.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I'm guessing all that hunting, they do that solo, right? Because they're pretty solitary birds.
You're right. Outside of breeding season, they like to be alone. You'll find them in vast wetlands, quiet lake shores, places where they can be by themselves.
Makes sense. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're a big predator at the top of the food chain,
Yeah.
you don't want any competition.
Exactly. Sharing is not always caring in the wild,
Right.
but there is one time when they do pair up.
Okay.
Breeding season.
Ah, so there's a softer side.
There is.
Well, I imagine their nests must be pretty impressive. If they're raising chicks bigger than themselves, they've got to have a good-sized nest. Do they build them on the ground near the water?
Actually, they build them high up in trees. Tall trees near water, of course. Big platforms made of sticks and twigs.
Oh, okay.
And inside, they line it with softer stuff like grass and moss for the eggs and chicks.
So security and comfort.
Yeah.
I was expecting them to be, the drop off the kids and run kind of parents, given their solitary nature. But it sounds like both parents are actually involved in taking care of those chicks.
Yeah, that might surprise you. They might be solitary most of the year, but both parents really get into the whole parenting thing. They take turns keeping those eggs warm and take care of the chicks once they hatch.
Wow. Real team effort.
It is.
But they're facing a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah.
I mean, their conservation status is vulnerable.
Yeah.
What are the biggest threats they're up against?
Well, the biggest issue is habitat destruction.
Okay.
Humans are draining and degrading wetlands for farming and development. As those wetlands disappear, so do the eagles' hunting grounds and their food sources.
It's tough to hear. I know wetlands are important, but it's easy to forget how vital they are to these birds. It's not just losing a home, it's losing their whole world.
It is. And it's not just about losing physical space. There's also the pollution from things like pesticides and fertilizers. Those chemicals end up in the water, poisoning the fish, and that affects the eagle's health and ability to reproduce.
It's like a double whammy then.
Yeah.
Their home is shrinking, and what's left is becoming more and more toxic. I think the text also mentions something about hunting and human disturbance being a problem too.
Yeah.
Is that a big factor?
While it's not as widespread as habitat loss and pollution, it definitely adds pressure to an already struggling population. Imagine trying to hunt and raise a family with constant noise and disruptions. Not easy.
No, that sounds incredibly stressful. It really makes you think about how our actions, even the small ones, can have a big impact on ecosystems far away.
Absolutely. And when you look at the bigger picture, the decline of the Pallas's fish eagle isn't just about one species. It's a warning sign for the health of all wetlands.
So you're saying that by understanding what's happening to this one bird, we can actually learn about the health of entire ecosystems.
Exactly. The Pallas's fish eagle sits right at the top of the food chain in its habitat. Whether it's thriving or struggling tells us a lot about how the whole system is doing.
It's like a canary in a coal mine, but for wetlands.
Yeah, exactly.
And from what we're learning, it sounds like the alarm bells are ringing.
They are, and it's not just about the Pallas's fish eagle.
Right.
The decline of this species impacts all the creatures that share its habitat. The fish, the amphibians, the plants. It throws the whole balance of the ecosystem off.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. It's amazing to think about how interconnected everything is.
It is.
I'm definitely eager to learn more about what all that means for us and what we can do to help.
Yeah.
But should we move on to the next part of our dive now?
Sounds good. Let's talk about what we can do to ensure this awesome bird survives.
Okay, so we know the Pallas's fish eagle is in a tough spot.
Yeah.
And that's a bad sign for the health of wetlands in general.
Right.
But what does that actually mean for, for us? Like, why should we care about a bird most of us will probably never even see?
That's a good question. And it really gets to the heart of why conservation is so important.
Okay.
We tend to see ourselves as separate from nature, but the truth is we're totally dependent on it. Healthy ecosystems, like wetlands,
Right.
They give us clean water, they help with flood control, they even regulate the climate.
So it's not just about saving wildlife.
Yeah.
It's about saving ourselves in the end.
Yeah, it is. And the Pallas's fish eagle, as a top predator, it's a perfect example of how we're all connected. By protecting this one species, we're actually protecting a whole web of life. And that benefits all of us.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But what can we actually do to help? Are there any conservation efforts already happening for the Pallas's fish eagle and its habitat?
There are some positive things happening. A few organizations are working hard to protect and restore wetlands in the areas where these eagles live. They're planting native vegetation,
Okay,
removing invasive species, and advocating for policies to protect these habitats.
that's good to hear. It sounds like there's a lot of work being done on the ground level.
There is.
But what about us regular folks, the people who aren't scientists or politicians? Can we do anything to help?
Absolutely. Every little bit counts. One easy thing you can do is think about how much water you use. The less water we waste, the less strain there is on freshwater sources. And that helps wetlands.
So things like shorter showers and fixing leaky faucets.
Yeah,
Those can actually make a difference for this bird on the other side of the world.
they can. It all adds up.
That's pretty amazing. What else can we do?
Another big one is reducing the amount of pesticides and fertilizers we use.
Yeah.
Those chemicals run off our lawns and gardens
Right.
and pollute waterways, which harms the fish the eagles eat.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I'm going to look into some more eco-friendly options for my garden.
good idea.
It's kind of mind-blowing that something as simple as switching fertilizers could help an entire ecosystem.
It really can. And don't forget about the power of awareness. The more people understand how important wetlands are
Yeah.
and the threats they face, the more likely we are to see real change.
You're right. Sometimes I get overwhelmed by how big these environmental problems are. Like, what can one person even do?
I get it.
But talking about it, sharing what we learn, encouraging others to get involved,
Mm.
those things can actually make a difference, right?
Absolutely. We can all be ambassadors for conservation, spread the word, inspire others to act. Even conversations like this one can plant a seed that leads to positive change.
I love that. So we've talked about supporting conservation organizations, using less water, being careful with chemicals.
Right.
What about tourism? Can that play a role in protecting the Pallas's fish eagle?
Definitely. If you're lucky enough to travel to an area where they live,
Yeah.
choose tour operators who prioritize sustainability and conservation, respect their habitat, observe them from a distance, and don't disturb their nests.
That's good advice for any wildlife encounter, really. Respectful observation is key.
It is.
Okay, so speaking of the future, what's next for the Pallas's fish eagle? Is there hope for this incredible bird?
I think there's always hope. We talked about all those people and organizations working hard to protect wetlands. They're doing amazing things like captive breeding programs, working with local communities, pushing for stronger laws.
That's really inspiring to hear,
Yeah.
but it also makes me think,
Yeah.
what if those efforts aren't enough? Like, what happens to the other species that depend on those wetlands if the habitat keeps disappearing?
That's a really important question, and it takes us back to the idea of how everything's connected. If we lose the wetlands, it's not just the Pallas's fish eagle that suffers. It'll affect everything. The fish, the amphibians, the plants, we'd see a huge loss of biodiversity.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. If one piece falls, the whole system becomes unstable. That's why we have to address these threats to wetlands now, before it's too late. We can't wait any longer.
I'm feeling kind of a mix of things right now. Is sad to think about what's at risk,
Yeah.
but also it's good to know that we can actually do something to change things.
Right. It's a complicated problem, but we can make a positive difference, both individually and by working together.
This has been eye-opening. I've learned so much about the Pallas fish eagle, its adaptations, its role in the ecosystem, the challenges it's facing.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most important thing we've talked about today?
For me, it's the realization that conservation is about more than just saving species. It's about saving ourselves, protecting the Pallas fish eagle and its habitat.
Right.
It's about protecting the health and well-being of all of us, now and in the future.
That's a really powerful takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something everyone can relate to, no matter who they are or what they believe. We all need a healthy planet,
We do.
and we all have to do our part to protect it.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to that final thought you mentioned.
Yeah.
What about all those other creatures that live alongside the Pallas fish eagle? What are their stories? What challenges are they up against?
Yes. I'd love to learn more about that. It feels like we've only just dipped our toes into this whole amazing world.
We have. That's the thing about nature. There's always something new to discover.
Okay, well, should we move on to the last part of our dives now?
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, as we've been talking about the Pallas's fish eagle and its wetland home, I've been thinking about those fish it's always trying to catch. What kind of adaptations do they have, to avoid becoming dinner?
That's a great question. The relationship between predator and prey is always so fascinating.
Right.
And in this case, it's a perfect example of what we call an evolutionary arms race. Basically, over time, both the eagle and the fish have developed their own little strategies to try and survive,
So it's like a constant competition.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the fish might evolve camouflage to blend in with the bottom of the river,
Well, that's smart.
or they might get super fast and agile to dodge those dives.
Makes sense.
And then the eagle, on the other hand, might develop even sharper eyesight so it can see those sneaky fish or stronger talons to grab them.
It's like they're always one-upping each
It's a
other.
never-ending back and forth.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And what about all the other creatures in the wetlands, the ones that aren't, like, directly involved in this predator-prey relationship?
Well, wetlands are incredibly diverse. There are tons of different plants, amphibians, reptiles, insects, mammals, all kinds of things. And they all play a role in keeping that ecosystem healthy and balanced.
I remember reading that sometimes Pallas's fish eagles will build their nests on top of old osprey nests.
Oh, yeah?
Is that a common thing?
It can be. Ospreys are another type of raptor that eats fish,
Right.
but they tend to be a bit smaller than the Pallas's fish eagle. So sometimes the eagles will just take over an old osprey nest.
So they don't have to build their own.
Exactly. Saves them a lot of time and energy.
That's pretty clever. Are there any other interesting relationships like that in wetlands? Where different species kind of help each other out?
Oh, tons. One of my favorites is the relationship between some birds and crocodiles.
Birds and crocodiles.
Yeah, it's wild. There are these birds, like the Egyptian plover, that actually clean the crocodile's teeth.
What?
They pick out parasites and bits of food.
No way.
The bird gets a meal, and the crocodile gets a nice, clean mouth.
So everybody wins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Win-win situation. That's incredible. I never would have thought those two species would get along like that.
Nature is full of surprises.
It really shows how interconnected everything is.
It does. And that interconnectedness
Right.
makes these ecosystems strong, but it also makes them vulnerable. When one species is affected, it can impact the whole system.
It's like that domino effect we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to the importance of conservation, right? Protecting the Pallas's fish eagle isn't just about that one bird.
Right.
It's about protecting this whole intricate web of life that makes wetlands so unique.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even if we don't live right next to a wetland, our choices still matter.
Yeah.
The products